And also, as I said, apart from all these industry specific development, there are also microcontroller vendors who have, let's say, as I told, if they have a very wide portfolio under their microcontroller business, then they don't want to follow each and every standard to for a specific industries, right? Because you need that much of time and effort to build all those things, and um, uh, microcontroller vendors, they don't want to spend that much of time and effort and money for that. So what they do is they just give a very basic demo low level drivers to the users or customers, whoever is going to be using, and the customers or the third party vendors or whoever they may be, they can just follow, they can see the demo drivers as an example, and they can develop their own drivers, whatever industry they are going to be used in. Okay, now coming to SDLC, which is software development life cycle. So usually, again, this is a very generic model of SDLC, which is more or less followed in almost all the industries, whoever are doing your low-level drivers, which is called as V model. So what is this V model? We have something called as development phase. So our development starts from business requirements. Now, these requirements can come from your open source or from your sales or anywhere. Then we analyze the requirements. Then what we do is we prepare a very high level design, which sometimes called as also architecture or high level design. You can name it whatever. Then you have a very detailed design. Then you have a code. Then this is called your development phase. Now, similarly, we have something called as testing phase, which starts with your unit testing, then your functional testing, then integrated testing, then acceptance testing, and then you release your software. Now, the namings differ from industries to industries, but more or less the work is same. So now you can find out why it is called a V model, right? So it comes from business to code, your requirements to code, then from code to testing. It's a V. That's why it's called as a V model. Now, each of these are placed against one of items in development phase. So each item in your testing phase is placed against one of the items, right? So there is a link between them. So what is the link? If you want to test whether your design is perfect or not, you will do a unit testing. If you want to do your driver is working on a top level or not, you will do a functional testing. Then if you want to see your requirements, are all the requirements are taken care or not, you will do integration. Then finally is acceptance, right? That's why it's placed against all these each other, and they complement each other also. And also you'll find different industries, they do this development and testing parallelly. So yeah, this is a very basic SDLC which is being followed, but different microcontroller vendors, they improvise and they implement a little more also. You'll see example of SPI. Okay, let's say you have SPI. I'll not go into the protocol. I'll just briefly tell you. So you have a SPI which is connected to 3 SPI slaves. Okay, maybe one flash, one sensor, one ADC or anything, right? And your SPI master has 4 pins. One is for clock, one is MOSI or master outputs, slave input. You have master input, slave output, and you have your slave selection. So what SPI does is based on the slave selection and based on the whoever is sending the data, whether it's a master sending the data or slave sending the data, they will transmit through this MOSI and MISO. Right, this is a basic standard your SPI protocol. Now, to keep this to keep your device driver or low level driver generic, what is done is from your requirement itself, all the APIs which I mean is function application peripheral interfaces, which we call as the industry term, or your functions are always mentioned in your requirement. So what is going to be your function name, what are going to be the parameters, what are going to be the return type, and what it is going to do, what the function is going to do. That is always mentioned in the in your requirement. Okay, so you have a you can have a function for initialization of SPI, for deinitialization. You can have for a master slave, you can have for send receive, you can have functions for synchronous transmission, asynchronous transmission, interrupt polling, and everything. So all these things are always there in your requirement. From requirement phase itself, you know what your function name and what is the behavior going to be, right? If you want to see a requirement, this is a very basic requirement, and this requirement is taken from AutoServe, which is open source. You can find this requirement by yourself also. So there's a requirement for SPI, which says that the function SPI init shall initialize all SPI relevant registers with the values of the structure parameter config PTR. So when you do a requirement analysis, what you will analyze here is, first, there's a function which is named as SPI underscore init. What it will do, it will initialize all SPI relevant registers. How it will initialize? There is some structure which is being passed as a pointer. The name of the pointer parameter is config PTR. This is how you need to analyze your requirement. Once you analyze your requirement, what you will do is you will go to your data sheet, right? You need to find out now what registers exactly are you going to initialize in this SPI init function. Okay, when I'm saying what registers exactly, so if you see this data sheet is also taken, it's available on public. It's for, I guess, ST microcontrollers. Yep. So when you say SPI init shall initialize, what it will initialize? So it has this many registers. So this microcontroller in SPI, we have these many registers. We don't want to initialize all these registers in SPI init itself, right? Because there is some DR. DR is basically your data register. I'm not writing any data for init. In init, what the requirement says is to only initialize. That's it. Then I'll find out, okay, what registers are what registers I'm going to be initializing in this SPI init. You'll do your analysis with a very basic flowchart, which is your detailed design. So you've gone through the data sheet. Now you know that, okay, first what I need to do is I need to turn on the peripheral. There is maybe some bit inside here which is turning on your SPI. Then you will configure your clock. You need to configure it's a master slave, or then the baud rate. Then are you using interrupts, or are you not using interrupts? I mean, you are doing for the polling, or which bit you want to send first, whether it's LSB or MSB. You are configuring all these things. Then you exit. So this is what your detailed design is for this function. There is a small issue here. What is that issue? I have a code that I am implementing. I am writing a function for SPI init. Okay. Let's say what I did is I wrote the SPI and I set the baud rate to 9600. Okay. And then I released that. I released that to a customer. Now a different customer comes to me. SPI which is working on maybe 115200 baud rate. Now another one comes in a different who wants to run the SPI driver in a different baud rate. Then what should I do? Should I go to the function again and rewrite the function with different baud rate? No, right? Because that's not sounding reasonable. Because baud rate is something is up to user to decide in which data rate he wants to send his data. So for that, what we do is we separate the configuration from our, so we'll have something called as config.c or config data or whatever the name is. Okay, there we'll define a structure which will contain all the data, like what is the baud rate, what is the clock I'm going to use, whether it's a master or slave, or all the data I'll have in this config.c, and I will just pass this data or this structure to my actual driver. So in this driver, only thing what I'll do is I'll just go to the registers and I fetch the value from here and I'll just place in the register. So there are two paths to development. So there are two paths to it. One is your code, which actually does the logic, which actually accesses your registers. And there is always a config data, which the user is allowed to configure as. Now, how this file will come? Is that something a customer is editing manually? I mean, customer has to come and this .c file does he need to add this thing manually? Again, what happens exactly is, so again, all these industries have their own qualified tools, UI tools. In these tools, what we do is the configuration. Once we do all this configuration in the tool, then we generate, and after the generate, we get our .c and .h files. That means this SPA underscore config.c, this file is basically a generated. This is not something manually written. This file is generated using this UI tool. Now, how you will generate this .c or .h, even that is also comes under the responsibility of a low-level device driver designer. Okay. When I mean this UI part, the driver developer doesn't need to develop the UI tools, but he needs to develop some kind of scripts. There are also scripts available for different tools. We use different scripts. So you use some kind of scripts to fetch data from this UI and generate a .c or .h file out. So even the script also comes as a part of device driver development. This is coming to your development side. If you see the testing phase, the same. What I'll do is, in case of unit testing, I'll consider a single functions. If I'm doing a unit testing for SPI init, only test SPI init. I'll not test any other functions. I'll not test if there is some local function, right? If you have a internal function, you have a function call from SPI init, I will not test that function or anything. So when I say a unit testing, one function is a unit for me. Okay, I'll test only a particular function. Then when I say function testing, I'll test whether in this case SPI, whether your data is being transmitted or not, whether your data is being received or not, whether whatever you have configured, those values are only stored in the register. Right, there can be a, because your config data is something coming from a different source, right? So what if user selects the baud rate is 115200 and what you are generating is 9600? It's a issue, right? So all these things again come into picture of functional testing. Integration testing. In integration testing, what happens is, when someone uses when you write an application in for your microcontroller, you don't use only SPI, right? You are developing a system. So you will be using all the devices. You will use SPI, you will use flash, you will use ADC, you will use USB, everything. So all these things need to work seamlessly. They all have to complement each other. So that is what we test in integration testing. Then finally, we have something called as acceptance testing, which is again sanity check, you may call it, where we just check whether whatever requirements we have got from business, whether those requirements are fulfilled or not. We also kind of develop a very, not a complete application stack, but we just develop a very demo application just to show that, hey, see, our drivers, whichever we have implemented, those are working fine. So all these things will come into your acceptance testing. This sums up the technical part. We'll see the career path now. So in career path, what we are going to see is what opportunities you will be having. Okay, if you want to take device driver development as a profession, and what your growth path looks like. Coming to opportunities. Now you already have seen that these drivers are used in almost all almost all hardware-based industries. Okay, so now if you have a leaning of understanding hardware and software both, if you know both, then yeah, this is a job that requires that that very particular skill, because we develop software, yes, but we also need to understand the hardware. Without the understanding of hardware, we cannot develop the software. That's why we need to know both hardware and software. Okay. Then almost all microcontroller and microprocessor vendors have a dedicated team for drivers, right? It may not be complying to a specific standard, but still almost all the microcontroller vendors have a team for drivers which do other things also, like demo drivers, which also do different configuration tools and many things. Now, if you take this device driver as a profession, then yeah, you can switch to hardware-based systems or software system if you feel that okay, this is not something I'm liking it anymore, and I want to switch to some other branch. Then yeah, that's also possible. Again, the reason being, as I told, you use your software, you use C, you also need to use Python, you also need to use other scripting languages here. So if you want to go maybe later a point of time, if you want to go for like silicon verification side, which is again comes more or less into hardware based systems, then you can go for that. If you want to go for like application developments for industries, like your I don't know, maybe like what LED data or any application you want to develop, you can go for the software based systems also. Growth. Now coming to growth, you always start with a developer. Again, this is a very generic term, right? Somebody calls it a developer, some calls it a engineer or embedded developer, anything. So from there, you can grow to a design engineer who will do the basic design of those peripherals and how the software is going to look like. And you can then go to the system architect level, who are basically responsible for the deciding factors. How are we going to develop and everything. The lead level, and you can also always go for the FAE, which is field application engineers. The field application engineers are someone they go on field and check. Let's say I have a microcontroller and I have developed some drivers, and I've given it to maybe I don't know, like Boeing or someone, and they have some issue. Then FAEs are the one who Boeing will contact, right? So FAEs will go and see what's the issue, they'll debug it, and whatever their findings, whatever there are findings, they'll transfer it to the correct person. Then you can also always go for change management, configuration management, a driver development or a software development. Only coding is not the part of development, right? Coding is just one part of the development. There are many things you need to understand when you are doing a development. So like you say, this change management is nothing but how are you going, if you have a bug, how are you going to address the bug? How are they going to look like? What are the several types of bug? So in configuration management, if you say, so once your code is developed, you have done your code, where are you going to store it? You need a repository, what do you call it, right? You need to use it, you need to use the repository, maybe using Git or SVN or I don't know, IBM ClearCase or any version controlling tool to save your code and everything. Again, which mostly we now we are going towards Git, but still there are also other configuration management softwares and tools which industries use, which we use. Then you have a QA, which is quality analysis. Then you also can go to functional safety. So I think I just discussed a little bit about functional safety, right? So based on the criticality of application which we are going to develop, we also have something called as functional safety compliant for those applications. So what functional safety compliant means is basically it's a more rigorous testing or more very stringent way of development of the software. Okay, so you can also go for functional safety engineer. You can also go for hardware security engineers. All of them are somewhere related to software and hardware, both combined.